Bisikkan komen pemuda yang tak guna. Mungkin soalan hari ini jadi jawapan yang membingungkan kita. Kalau boleh jangan merujukkan Pak Google atau minda salam yang tercintai dan tersebar.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth, and I just want to give everyone a warm welcome to Singapore Art Museum. I've been told that actually this weekend is quite a stiff competition because we had Taylor Swift coming to town, of course. But also, with SneakerCon, if anyone's a sneakerhead, happening over in Suntec. But nonetheless, I would like to thank everyone for making the time here today to be with us for Hari Ini. I'll just say a quick words before passing the time over to our speakers. First and foremost, Hari Ini is really for us kind of a small, informal gathering that we kind of wanted to mark not just the last weekend of the exhibition, but also as a way to really sort of gather all the people who've been working on some of Tzu Nyen's newest commissions, Tea for Time, as well as Tea for Time timepieces. So the following 3 sessions that will follow today are kind of loosely structured around the 2 works. The first panel will speak a little bit more about Tea for Time. The second panel is a kind of a special panel, I would say, where we're talking about time in relation to timepieces from non-collaborators. That's all I'm going to say for now. I just want to also give a shout out that there is also a tour happening at 4 p.m. For Curators Tour. This is probably the last Curators Tour that we'll have for the show. So those of you who have signed up or haven't signed up yet, you can also just proceed down to Gallery 1 and 2 later at 4 p.m. where my colleague Celine will be leading the tour. And with that, that's it from me. I'll pass the time over to Tzu Nyen, Bani, Soon Kim, as well as Chomo, who will now take the stage, I guess. And thank you all for coming. We'll move on to session 1, music moment. Thanks.
Hi, hello everyone. Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm Tzu Nyen. So I'll be moderating the first session with three of my collaborators on the latest work that we made, which is Tea for Time. So I will just make a very brief introduction about on each of them and what they and how they contributed to the projects. So first of all, on my left is Bani haykal, who very nicely kick-started the day with a beautiful performance. So, well, I would say Bani contributed to Tea for Time in a few different ways. First of all, he was the vocalist. So he performed all of the vocals in Tea for Time. Secondly, he produced what we call creative Foley. It's our own term. I started thinking that there's no such thing as non-creative Foley, but anyway, he was adding additional sound effects for the animation that we produced. And third of all, he also contributed to the script that we made. Right? Okay, and on my right here, I'm very happy to introduce Soon Kim. He's a musician, saxophonist, and he played the wonderful saxophone track in Tea for Time, which for me is really the rhythmic backbone of the piece. So we are very happy to have him here. First time in Singapore, I believe. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, very nice. It's okay.
Do you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And my introduction is brief because I will ask them each one to introduce themselves at greater length after this. And the third and not least is Tomoyuki Arai, who has been a close collaborator for a few of my projects over the years. First of all, he helps with my research. He's also a collaborator on the script, and he's also a dramaturg. And on that word, dramaturg, I would like to pause, and I will pass it over to Tomoyuki to explain what is a dramaturg, because I think we hear that, but especially in the visual arts, we are not quite sure what that is. So, Tomo, can I have you start? Yeah.
Hello, thank you for having me here. It's very demanding for me to explain what dramaturgy is, because there is a super specialist about it in the floor. It's very scary, but I didn't mean to be a dramaturg. I work for a performing art platform in Japan where we decided to invite his One or Several Tigers in 2018, and I translated it. And by translating his work, I rapidly started to understand the context and logics of the way he works. And then he started to work on very difficult works about Japanese wartime history. And he emailed me, "What do you think of this plan?" And I just responded. And my responses seemed to be useful for him. So the exchange continued. And before I knew, I was writing the script with him. So after that, I had to name what I did with him. And I didn't know any word. It's a co-script writer and it's too complicated. So I said dramaturg. But the people of the visual art world told me that they don't say dramaturg usually in visual art work. But we use the word often recently. So I chose the word.
Can I ask, in the theatrical tradition, just briefly, what is a dramaturg? What is the role of a dramaturg? I'm forcing him to explain, but
there is a specialist, but it's a German word basically, and in Germany, I guess there is someone who is not the artist, not the playwright, not the director, and not actor, but someone who bridges between them somehow. And sometimes he censors, probably, and sometimes he makes suggestions to make the play better understood or something like that. Yes. And this has been interpreted and reinterpreted and applied to different situations. Yes.
I think that's good as a quick introduction. And can I ask you to speak a little bit about your own practice or your career? Could you share a little bit about that?
I work at a non-profit organization in Japan, and I directed a music festival called Sound Live Tokyo, which ended in 3 years because of we presented many crazy shows, but didn't draw too many audience, so it didn't continue on longer than 5 years. But I worked with Tzu Nyen, for example, in the festival, and I'm very proud of the shows still. And also I work at something called YPAM, Yokohama International Performing Arts Meeting. It's an international professional platform for performing arts practitioners, where we invited one of several tigers and we co-produced the mysterious Lightek. Before I personally started to work with him on Hotel Aporia.
Thank you for that. And now returning back to Bani, I think you are familiar, I think, to many of our Singaporean audience, but still I would like you to speak a little bit about how you understand your artistic trajectory. Yeah.
Depending on the day that you meet me, I might say something else about what I do and what I'm interested in. Like, this obsession changes almost drastically, sometimes every hour. But today, in relation to not just the work that we've done together, like at the heart of it, I'm very much interested in working with text, materializing or manifesting text, things that I write in as many different ways as possible. Like, everything is made or conceived through sketches of text that I would write. Some of these things eventually become more musical in nature, which I think is a common part of what I do. I work with music a fair bit, on some occasions sound if I feel up to it, which is why Creative Foley was quite a challenge to work on, which I guess we'll speak about later on as well. But yeah, that's who I am in a nutshell, I suppose.
So I always find it very difficult to describe Bani because he has so many skills and he works with in so many disciplines. So what are some of the musical instruments you are comfortable playing?
I'm not comfortable with any musical instrument. Whenever this question is brought up, I always say I play an instrument, play being the operative word. I'm almost extremely undisciplined with an instrument. The means to play something, I think everyone is able to do that. And for me, that is the joy of immersing yourself with a machine. And this is kind of like something I think about a fair bit, the relationship that we have with machines. So, musical instruments as machines and myriad other things. So the voice is something that I'm most comfortable with. It's what I use the most. But in terms of composition, I use a few different instruments which I have. Anything that can fit in my room basically is what I work with. So a guitar, a couple of synthesizers, and that's about it. Yeah.
But I think the first time we worked together was for performance for Cloud of Unknowing, was it? And I remember you were playing a clarinet, some woodwind, other woodwind like instruments, and a drum as well. So on top of that, you are proficient with the guitar and of course with vocals. So Bani also did the vocals for the Critical Dictionary of Southeast Asia, which in some ways the system is quite similar to how we work on T for Time, but we will speak about that a little bit later. And now I would like to go to Mr. Soon Kim. Yeah. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and your artistic and musical journey so far.
All right. Yeah, I'm Soon Kim, saxophone player. As you look at me. Yeah. Well, I usually play kind of contemporary style of the music, like a jazz, and also just improvisation music. And occasionally, I perform with contemporary dancers in contemporary the painter, shall I say? Like a live painting, And sometimes I had the work with film, art film makers, in my life. But this time was very unusual. I mean, not normal the work. When I got phone call from the Tomo first time, and he requested me just play the one tone for the 60 minutes. It was very strange. Just only one tone, and then making a record and a sound track and send it to him. Yeah, that's an easy job. It's just only one tone for me, but what is that? I thought. But anyway, yeah. So finally, because I had a good conversation with Tzu Nyen about this project, so I could see how I gotta play the one tone, why only the one tone, yeah. And should I answer you maybe too much?
Yeah.
It's okay?
I think we can, yeah. I think we will go into that part of the conversation for sure about how you worked on the piece. Mm-hmm. But before that, maybe just to ask a little bit, for how long have you been playing the saxophone?
Sure. Yeah. I should let you know about my career. I've been playing the saxophone pretty long, I started at 16 years old, so it's nearly over 40 years. And I learned the music under jazz legend Ornette Coleman. I was lucky. And I based in Berlin, Germany, and also in Tokyo, in Japan. So, yeah. And what else shall I say about me?
Yeah. So the kind of music that you play, does it usually have a fixed score? Or is it usually improvised? Or do you do both?
Right. Yeah. My composition has, of course, the melody. Then I play the improvisation because the melody is a concept. Yeah. I have to play that melody, the feeling, the concept. But there's no introduction. Musicians say like a chorus and the keys, whatever. We don't care about it, Whatever the tone the musician play, that's the thing. I gotta play. That's my way to playing the music.
Yeah, great. Okay, and maybe now I move a little bit to Tomo, because actually Tomo was the first to suggest that we work together with Soon Kim, actually at a very early stage in the projects, when I myself didn't have a very clear image of how the project would end up. But we kind of decided on certain things at a very early stage. And one of them was that we would work with Soon Kim. So now I'm kind of curious to ask Tomo to share a little bit why and how did you think about Soon Kim?
We don't really remember what we have discussed, but I have been trying to remember from yesterday, and at the very early stage we had a three-hour meeting in Tokyo, and he told me he would be working on a new work about time, and I said no, please no, but if we would work on time at the team, the viewing experience as a temporal experience, quality of the temporality must be the core. So I immediately thought of the mode of the speech and music. And in the conventional understanding or enjoyment of music, you represent it as a linear progression. And I thought of the Italian composer Giacinto Sciossi. Can I? This is a quote from what Sciossi said. The sound is spherical, yet it seems to have only two dimensions, register and duration. So register is a paradigm, and duration is a syntax. So it's vertical and horizontal. So it's two-dimensional. But he thought of the third dimension, which is depth. So he thought of sound as a sphere, and so he composed many tunes that made almost of only one note. But this one note is repeated again and again, and with different textures and approaches. And this reminded me also of Ornette Coleman, who is his master. And Ornette actually did the soundtrack of Naked Lunch, the movie directed by David Cronenberg, based on the novel by William Burroughs, and which is frequently quoted in Tzu Nyen's work, The Name. And so the Ornette Coleman said, jazz is the only music in which the same note can be played night after night, but differently each time. So there is an idea of repetition and difference in it. And I find it somehow similar to Sciosi's idea, which led me to think of him. And what was the next slide? I don't remember. So this is from Maceda, the Filipino composer. And he's also saying something similar. And you know better than me about him, I guess. But anyway, I thought, for example, there must be many other people who proposed similar ideas, but I think this reflects somehow of the drastic change in the perception system, how you perceive the world, this drastic change that occurred during the World War II or immediately after the World War II. And I think we are still in this paradigm. So I thought it would be important to have this idea as a base of our musical approach to this project. And Tzu Nyen uses drone often. For example, the drone music in Hotel Opera is made of more than 100 tracks to make it complex and multi-layered. But you hear only the one continuous sound, but there are more than 100 layers. But this time we wanted to work with a wind instrument because it's virtually impossible to create a drone. But still, we wanted to try to create some kind of alternative temporal experience with this limited, because he has to inhale. So this is how I think we thought of him.
Great, thank you very much. Just to give a very quick context, a little bit of explanation about the structure of T for time. So T for time as a work, it's algorithmically composed. So an algorithm is editing the work, and the algorithm is also selecting between the different voiceovers, all of which are performed by bani. So everything is in variation all the time. The loop never repeats. But the only one thing that is repeated exactly is actually Sun Kim's saxophone track, which is 60 minutes long. So this is why I describe it as the backbone. So it is the repetition, but all the other elements are always in variation with the structure. So earlier, Tomo, you showed us a quote on Chelsea, speaking about the sphere, like talking about sound in this rounded way. And I think last night in our conversation, you mentioned as well that you think of the music you play as having a kind of roundedness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose rounded, I would think in opposition to the angular, so that's one thing I would like you to speak a little bit about this roundedness. But second, I think, or maybe first of all, I would like you to describe how you approach the recording session for the saxophone track. Because when Sun Kim started recording the track, he has never seen any of the footage that is now present. He's not heard Bani's vocals. And actually, we only had one Zoom conversation between two of us. And then he went off to do the recording. And I'm always super curious, how did you mentally prepare for that process?
Yeah, so like I told you, just only when I heard that your request was just only one tone and playing for 60 minutes, it was a very unusual request for me. It's easy, but I thought it's pretty boring, So, but we had the conversation, and you explained to me there's a time, But there's many kinds of time. That's my understanding, at that time. So I could imagine. Oh yeah, you enjoying? Good. Okay. So my understanding, at the time was maybe I have my own time, and you have your own time. When you have having a the very enjoyable time, you feel very short, and time goes quick. But if I have the very boring time, and it's long hours, but it's same, the different time at the same time, yeah, and also human being time, and also nature time, like in the tree time, and maybe ants time, and maybe animal time, or dog time, cat's time, all different, but they are all over there, just here, on the same planet, I mean the same time, but a different time there is. So I thought, okay, I should try to describe each that time with one tone. That was I could imagine during he was explaining me this project. So I thought, oh yeah, that's good. That's very fantastic idea. So I could imagine what the works would be, what the film would be like. Yeah.
Thank you. That was really nice. I think, and for me, it's very interesting and an exciting process. that the collaborators each imagine the work and are producing their contributions according to their own imaginations of what the final work would be. I say it's very exciting now on hindsight, but during that time, I must confess that it got me quite nervous as well, since everybody working on the project is producing kind of on their own separate track. And the challenge or the exciting moment is when you bring them all together and you see whether it works or not. And with that, maybe I would like to move to Bani, who, of course, his voice is a very distinctive and critical part of I would say, the shape and texture of Tea for Time. So I would also like to ask you about how you approach this collaboration.
I don't know, I worked with Tzu Nyen for like a few projects, so on some level, I anticipate how ridiculous things could get, but at the same time also, I think I was very underprepared. Critical dictionary was from A to Z, so this was just T. In my opinion, I thought, just one thing, just one letter, how bad could it be? It was wild, the way things were. But this idea of a generative, cinema that sort of like unravels and how it's never, the same combination was the basis of critical dictionary anyway. So like that wildness, I guess, wasn't foreign coming into Tea for Time. So coming into it was like I was already prepared for how much work is required for this. But there are differences in terms of how I worked or approached critical dictionary and this one, because Tea for Time and we were just sort of like locking into just one letter. I think with critical dictionary, we had a different set of prompts that you gave and like different directions as to how the voice is sort of like shaping the work or shaping the dictionary for that matter. And this time around, I think I was quite conscious about it being driven quite centrally around this idea of melodies. So there's a lot more melodic component in the way that I was thinking or improvising with the text. Some of them may not sound like it, but everything was kind of like recorded with a tonal center for each take, and I kind of always gravitate towards that. I mean, these are sort of like some brief like conceptual moments as to how this was done, but I think technically it was a challenge on its own to work on this. Sorry, just a quick one, right? Like, as someone who's very much invested in cycling, one of the most like difficult like cycling races is probably the one that's not spoken of the most, and it's actually the race where you move the slowest over a very short distance. It's extremely difficult because you're not allowed to go on a fixed gear where you can sort of like do a track stand very easily. It's a road bike, it's geared, and you're just expected to move as slowly as possible from one point to the next. And it's one of the most tedious and difficult like races ever, because the amount of control you need to have to go from one point to the next is pretty extraordinary. And the speed of which people complete this race, you're supposed to be the slowest. So how much can you actually be in control of that very moment? So thinking about, the way Soon Kim sort of like approached this and the idea of just like utilizing a single note, I think, I don't want to call it a reversal, but somehow when you flip this demand for technique to be seen or be executed in a very different way, conceptually, philosophically, you feel different things the moment you enter or are enmeshed with that process or with the machines that's sort of like holding you. I don't know, just something that I was thinking of when talked about.
Can I, please? Yeah. I just wanted to show this, but it's probably in too low resolution for anyone to see. So this is actually the script for T for Time, so just also to kind of explain a little bit the structure and the construction of the work. So you on the left side, you basically see number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So these are the chapters that we have in T for Time. So we often say T for Time is 60 minutes because the saxophone track from Soon Kim is 60 minutes. But there's no actual beginning or end. So the algorithm shuffles between these 39 different chapters in the work. But with each chapter, you see there are different columns. So with each chapter, the algorithm selects between 3 to 5 different versions of the text. So all of these are all sung and produced by Bani. So it's 39 chapters times 5 or times 3 to 5. So that was the amount of work that he produced. So the only kind of, I would say like directions or suggestions that I gave is on top of each column, I write a style, which is a suggestion. So the first one says melodic. So that's my only kind of like instruction, which is that it's supposed to be melodic. Yeah. And the second one is whispered. So that's a text that is supposed to be whispered. The third one is, I can't even see it myself. Oh, the third one is free. This must be the most difficult because it's free, so there are no parameters, and Bani can basically decide whatever he wants to do. The fourth one is read. So this is to be read in a kind of straight. I imagine that this was quite straightforward, but when I actually heard the recordings that Bani did, I was also quite amazed at the kind of dramatical decisions you made in the pauses that, in reading a simple passage, right? And the last one is called 𝘕𝐿𝑖, which is a strange description. So 𝘕𝐿𝑖 refers to an American composer that I like a lot, who's Robert 𝘕𝐿𝑖, who often works with a kind of sung texts. And this was something we did in Critical Dictionary. I also had this 𝘕𝐿𝑖 version. And I remember in our conversations, you said you were going to do the 𝘕𝐿𝑖 differently this time. Yeah. So that was also a great surprise for me. Yeah. So this is just basically to kind of explain a little bit of these structures that we had. And I have another confession to make to Bani in public today, which was that I always hesitated because we got the recording from Soon Kim's at some point when you were about to start recording your vocals. And I wasn't sure for the longest time whether or not to share the recording with you. And because as is typical of me, my indecision leads to non-action. So I didn't share the recording until I knew you had already begun the processes of recording. So that was those were the kind of decisions I guess I had to make, like whether or not it was better for Bani to know the saxophone track or not, right? So, these were some of these little games, I guess, that we played. And when it comes to these kind of games, they are both a kind of aesthetic decision for me. The form of the work and the process are related to these decisions. And on that, I would like to go back to Tomo, because I must confess, I also don't quite know exactly what is a dramaturg. But for me, Tomo is a constant kind of companion in all the different artistic decisions I had to make, just someone to have conversations with. But now I would like you to speak a little bit about your processes in working on T for Time. Yeah.
Before T for Time, I worked with him on 2.5 works on works on wartime Japanese ideology. And this session is about music, so I'm not going to talk about the Kyoto school or Japanese ideology, but I entrust Professor Ma Junyon to do that tomorrow. And she's better than me. And but we were very carefully searched for our route to approach this complicated topic in these 2 or 3 works. And then T4 Time was the first work that I was involved with without explicit reference to Japanese things. And probably thanks to the experience of the previous 2, 3 works, we were in a kind of, I'm afraid of using this word, but the freedom. And this freedom is not about being able to do anything that we like, but we kind of shared this sensation or feeling that everything we do would be okay. It might not be right, but it cannot be wrong, and it cannot be fatally wrong. So we could throw anything that comes to our minds into this work freely, and everything could be relevant because the theme is time, which is universal of the universal. So I like to call this state of working or thinking or speaking, I like to call it free indirect speech, which is Pasolini's idea, where you can, in my understanding, you can talk with other people's head. So, and this does not mean we are not responsible. We have to take responsibility about using other people's heads. So it can be even more complicated, but it's freer than simply and seriously reflecting on your own responsibility about history or about being Japanese or etc. So, am I responding to your question?
Yes. Yeah. Just to maybe add.
I would like to remind of the concept of harmonics, because Tzu Nyen just told me before this session that he felt that T4 time is quite harmonic, and harmonics is a word coined from harmony, melody, and logic, right? No? Like that. Something like that. And it's 𝐒𝐤𝐫𝐿𝐼𝐴's idea. And for jazz fans like me, harmonics is always a mystery. There is a legend that nobody understands it. But there are dozens of great musicians who played with 𝐒𝐤𝐫𝐿𝐼, but none of them understood harmonics. But they just did it. And he is very good at articulating the idea verbally. So I would like to hear in what way he thought T4 time was harmonic. Can you please say something about your impression of T4 time as a possibly harmonic work?
Yeah, like he already explained about the harmonic. Yes, I felt very similar the things from the film, because the voice of him and the sound of me and film, cartoon animation and some of the pictures, and it looks like even the things in the same on the same screen. There is no like a master and slaves, the relationship between each of us. So that's feeling more. How can I say? If I say that, maybe like a more cubic, the things I feel it's greater and wider things I felt about that. So he maybe combined a very nice work. I think that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Bani, I wanted to ask you, when you first saw Tea for Time, what were your impressions? If it's very negative, maybe we can keep it to ourselves. But no, I'm kidding. Yeah, please. Yeah.
So, of course, much like Soon Kim, actually, I think for all of us, we were all working in this very modular manner. Like, we all saw bits and pieces. I don't think there was ever a point where I knew what the complete picture would be, but theoretically, there's a sense of what it is. And I think also, like, it's like this idea of making generative works isn't foreign to me either, in a sense whereby one of the work that I do is a kind of generative choir where I collect samples, which the machine then eventually like develops its own kind of like composition through these things. So I like that process a lot of not knowing what the final outcome would be, and that this is basically the thing that I fall back onto, what's been written and how do I ultimately project each of these texts. That's as far as what I'm concerned with. But at least that's for the voice. For the Foley, on the other hand, it's a completely different beast altogether. I'm neither a Foley artist or a sound designer in the stricter sense of the word, so being able to work with images and to produce different kinds of sonic textures relating to it, some could be a bit more Foley, some could be a little bit more abstract in its nature. There's a certain degree of freedom there, but at the same time, I'm also constrained by the fact that there has to be some kind of, to use this term loosely, logic that corresponds between what we hear and what we see. That was very challenging. And I think because the Creative Foley was a project that was split between another collaborator of ours, Ada, and myself, and we had discussions about how much depth do we want for each scene to have? Do we want it to be dynamic in what it expresses, or do we want it to be, I won't say static, but to the point, like there is just one central focus of what we're encountering when we see these things.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we have to wrap up on the session very soon, but maybe I just make two last remarks. The first was on Tomo mentioning free indirect speech and Pasolini. So Pasolini is a filmmaker we both like and enjoy a lot, and I think he wrote only one non-fictional text, which was a study of cinema called Heretical Empiricism. And he speaks about cinema, like for him, the freedom, the power of cinema is free indirect speech, meaning that you could switch your subject position from I to they, and it allows this constant kind of like switching. And we mentioned this because a lot of our text actually comes from different sources. So some of them are like from physicists that I was engaging with, some of them from emails by Bani, a lot of it contributions by Tomo as well. So in a way, even the subject position is something kind of fluid when we constructed it. I'll leave it at that. And the final thing I wanted to speak about is kind of going back to this notion of like all of us not knowing what the work is, right, when we were working on it. And somehow, for me, that was something quite precious and important to the project. I think in the end, when I started Tea for Time, I thought I would unravel the secret of time, but I'm very, very far. I'm even further from it. In the end, all I know is that there are just a multitude of time that is just pure multiplicity of temporalities. And I think Sun Kim very beautifully said, no master and slave, because when it comes to synchronizing clocks, sometimes we have a master clock and you have slave clocks. In our politically correct moment, this terminology probably has to change very soon. But in our work, I didn't want this one kind of like master clock, and I wanted just a pure heterogeneity. And each of these different times were all equal to the other, and that we each, I guess, produce our own time. Yeah. So maybe with that, I think we can conclude the session. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.